What happens when a faded Hollywood icon goes head-to-head with the White House's powerhouse woman? Tonight at the packed studio of the talk show, the American perspective typically reserved for profound dialogues, the atmosphere ignites like a political arena. On one side is Richard Gere, once a cinematic legend, now better known for his controversial statements than his classic roles. On the other is Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old press secretary to President Trump, dubbed a steel sword in a velvet glove. It all began at an artist tribute night in Los Angeles. Gere, unexpectedly, stood up on the glittering stage and hurled a cold jab at the president. If a man can't make his wife happy, how can he lead a nation? The room fell silent. Social media erupted. And while people debated whether it was humor or an insult, Karoline Leavitt stayed quiet, until tonight. From the Oval Office to the talk show stage, Leavitt brings more than a defense. She brings meticulous preparation, a razor-sharp political intellect, and a message ready to destroy any attack. This is a showdown between legend and reality, between nostalgia and power, between Hollywood and the White House. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The studio glows under the stage lights, the air taut as a bowstring as the host, Lena Harper, steps out to thunderous applause. With her sharp style and cryptic smile, Lena knows how to turn a talk show into a media battlefield. She raises a hand, the audience falls silent, and cameras pan across eager faces from Trump supporters waving Leavitt leads signs to free-spirited viewers holding Gere for Truth banners. Lena's voice rings out, low but dramatic. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we'll witness an unrelenting battle. Please welcome our first guest, the Hollywood legend, Richard Gere. Applause mixes with whistles. Gere strides out, his silver hair gleaming under the lights, his demeanor still carrying the charm of a 90s heartthrob. Dressed in a deep blue suit, he offers a slight smile, but his eyes glint with near-arrogant confidence. Gere waves to the crowd, settles into the chair opposite Lena, his posture relaxed like a philosopher about to dispense wisdom. Lena leans in, eyes twinkling. Mr. Gere, the nation's buzzing about your comment at the Los Angeles tribute. You called the president's marriage into question, and challenged his leadership. Why did you do it? Gere shrugs, his voice low and deliberate, as if stating the obvious. Lena, I'm not here for pointless controversy, he begins, his gaze sweeping the room. But let's look at reality. A leader should be an example, in family, in morals, in how they treat those closest to them. I see a man at the pinnacle of power, but the woman beside him, she looks like she's enduring, not thriving. Liberal audience members clap enthusiastically, but conservatives immediately react, boos ringing out, one shouting, "What do you know about them?" Lena raises a hand, her smile sly. Calm down, we'll hear both sides. She turns to Gere. You're referring to Melania Trump's public moments, times she's seemed distant, but are you judging too quickly? Gere shakes his head, his tone sharpening. It's not judgment, Lena, it's observation. I've traveled the world, met people fighting for freedom, for human rights. I know what love and connection look like, but when I look at America's most powerful couple, I see a different picture, one of distance, of interests over heart. If a man can't build warmth in his own home, how can he inspire a nation? Lena, sensing the heat, ramps up the tension. Mr. Gere, you've painted a rather bleak picture of the president. But don't you think this comment could backfire? Karoline Leavitt, waiting backstage, is known for her unrelenting sharpness. Are you ready to face her? Gere smiles, but a flicker of caution crosses his eyes. Lena, I'm not afraid of anyone. I speak the truth, and the truth doesn't need to apologize. If Miss Leavitt wants to debate, I'm ready. But I doubt she can defend a man the world has seen fail in his own household. Conservative audience members roar in protest, some waving Trump forever signs. Lena laughs, her eyes gleaming. Oh, I love this confidence. But let's see, because Karoline Leavitt is no pushover. She turns to the camera. Viewers at home, what do you think? Is Gere right, or did he just poke a hornet's nest? In the studio, the atmosphere is on the verge of exploding. Cameras pan across the audience's faces, a conservative veteran shaking his head, a liberal activist nodding in agreement. Gere sits upright, his gaze still locked on Lena, but his hand grips the armrest lightly. a subtle sign of tension. He thinks he's scored points, that the liberal crowd and media will back him. But he doesn't know that, backstage, Karoline Leavitt is watching every second of this performance. Her eyes as cold and sharp as a blade, clutching a slim folder of documents, ready to turn Gere's confidence into the biggest mistake of his career. Lena, with the instincts of a seasoned host, senses the defining moment approaching. She stands raising a hand. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just getting started. Lena Harper, with her sharp smile, stands center stage, her eyes gleaming like a conductor who knows the drama is about to erupt. Ladies and gentlemen, she says, her voice taut as a bowstring, Richard Gere just dropped a bomb on the White House. But now we'll meet the woman known as President Trump's sharpest blade. Please welcome Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. The conservative crowd's cheers shake the room. Leavitt leads signs raised high, while liberals sit quietly, their eyes wary. Karoline Leavitt strides out, her red blazer blazing like fire, blonde hair tied high, each step exuding unshakable confidence. She offers a slight wave, her thin smile like a blade hidden in an elegant sheath, her eyes locked on Richard Gere, who remains seated, his grip on the armrest tighter than ever. Lena invites her to sit across from Gere, the air in the studio thickening, every gaze fixed on the two figures. Cameras zoom in, capturing every detail, Leavitt's icy stare. Gere's strained smile. Lena leans in, her voice provocative. Karoline, Mr. Gere just painted a bleak picture of President Trump's family, calling it distant and questioning his leadership. Your response? Leavitt sits straight, her voice ringing out, clear and sharp as a bell cutting through the air. Lena, Mr. Gere stands on a Hollywood stage, lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion, and thinks he's qualified to lecture Americans about family. President Trump is a father, a husband, and a leader who's weathered media storms none in this room could imagine. The conservative crowd erupts, applause like thunder. Someone shouts, "Go Karoline!" Leavitt turns to Gere, her gaze like an arrow piercing through. Mr. Gere, you talk about love and connection. Have you ever sat down with a Nebraska farm family, heard them talk about 16-hour workdays to feed their kids, or do you only know lavish Los Angeles parties? Gere opens his mouth to respond, but Leavitt doesn't let him interrupt. President Trump understands those people. He fights for them, despite lies from Hollywood and the liberal media. And you? What do you bring besides empty platitudes? Conservatives leap to their feet, clapping, while liberals murmur, some shaking their heads. Lena cuts in. Karoline, you're attacking Mr. Gere personally. But let's go back to his comment. He said Melania isn't happy, and that reflects on Trump's leadership. What do you say about her public image? Leavitt smiles, unfazed. Image? Lena, images are what Hollywood creates to sell tickets. Melania Trump is a strong mother, a steadfast wife, standing by the president through trials Mr. Gere could never comprehend. If he wants to talk about happiness, he should look at himself first. I hear Mr. Gere has an interesting human rights story. He doesn't want the public to know. The audience gasps, murmurs rippling through the room. Lena raises a hand, eyes sparkling. What secret, Karoline? You're making the whole room curious. Leavitt tilts her head, her smile a dangerous promise. Lena, I don't do pointless drama, but if Mr. Gere wants to play the judgment game, I have a story about him that'll make Americans rethink this human rights champion. Just wait a bit. Truth needs the right moment. Conservatives cheer, while Gere shifts in his seat, his eyes betraying unease for the first time. Gere tries to regain composure, his voice stiff. Miss Leavitt, if you have evidence, show it. Don't play coy. Leavitt looks straight at him, her tone calm but sharp as a blade. Mr. Calm, Gere, I'm not being coy. I'm giving you a chance to rethink before the whole country hears the real story. The audience gasps again, applause mixing with boos in a chaotic symphony. Lena, with the instincts of a veteran host, stands. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need a breather to digest this drama. Back right after the break, and I promise, you won't want to miss it. As the stage lights dim, the audience remains electrified, phones glowing with X-posts. A new meme surfaces, Leavitt's image with the caption, "When you don't just win a debate, but are ready to end your opponent's career." Backstage, Leavitt stands silently, her eyes gleaming with absolute confidence. She knows she's cornered Gere, and the decisive blow is near. Meanwhile Gere, in the waiting room, scrolls through X, seeing the hashtag #LeavittSavage dominate. He clenches his fist, unease now turning into real fear. The stage lights blaze back on after the break, the studio shaking with the roar of applause and chants from a divided audience. Lena Harper, with the flair of a gladiator commanding the arena, stands center stage, her eyes sparkling as if anticipating a media explosion. "Ladies and gentlemen," she declares, each word slicing through the air, "Karoline Leavitt just lit a torch, and Richard Gere is feeling the heat. But who truly represents America's heart?" Crowd roars, conservatives raising Leavitt leads signs high, while liberals wave Gere for truth banners. Lena leans in, her voice provocative. "Karoline, Mr. Gere says President Trump fails to show love in his family, and that's why he's unfit to lead. He calls it the truth. What do you say?" Leavitt smiles, not a friendly smile, but the glint of a warrior ready to strike. "Lena, Mr. Gere calls it truth, but he only sees what Hollywood taught him, a scripted scene. President Trump doesn't live to please cameras. He lives to protect millions of American families, from steel workers in Pennsylvania to single mothers in Georgia. They don't need a leader, starring in a romance film. They need one who fights for them." The conservative crowd erupts, applause crashing like waves, someone shouting, "That's right, Karoline." Leavitt turns to Gere, her voice sharp as a blade cutting through the air. "Mr. Gere, you talk about love, but what have you done to understand the Americans you call unhappy? Do you know how much a farmer pays for gas to haul crops? Or how long a veteran waits for health care? Those are the people Trump fights for, while you sit in your mansion, reciting human rights scripts no one believes." Conservatives leap to their feet, cheers echoing, while liberals murmur, some shaking their heads, helpless against the onslaught. Gere, feeling the pressure, sits up straighter, his eyes flashing with anger. "Miss Leavitt," he begins, his voice trembling slightly but striving for a philosophical tone. "You speak well, but you're deflecting. I don't need to be a farmer to know a leader must be an example. I see a man at the peak of power, but the woman beside him looks trapped in his very spotlight. That's not leadership, that's failure." Liberals clap, one raising a "Gere for truth" sign higher, but conservative boos nearly drown them out. Lena cuts in, eyes gleaming. "Karoline, Mr. Gere just called it failure. How do you counter?" Leavitt tilts her head, her gaze never leaving Gere, her voice calm but sharp as an arrow. "Mr. Gere, you call it failure but you don't understand strength. Melania Trump stands by the president not for cameras, but because she believes in him, in his mission for America. And you stand on stages judging others, but you're the one failing when you turn your back on the values Americans cherish." Lena pushing the tension to its peak. "Karoline, you hinted at an interesting story about Mr. Gere. The audience is waiting. Mr. Gere, what's she talking about?" Gere responds instantly, his voice tight. "Miss Leavitt, if you have evidence, show it. Don't play childish games with innuendos." Leavitt smiles, her eyes like a panther ready to pounce. "Mr. Gere, I'm not playing childish games. I'm giving you a chance to rethink before the whole country hears about your human rights actions. Actions not as noble as you'd have people believe." The audience gasps, murmurs rippling through the room. Someone shouts, "She's got something big." Gere, now visibly rattled, points at Leavitt. "You're a puppet of an administration that only manipulates the media," he says, his voice shaking. "You have nothing but slander." Leavitt looks straight at him, her voice like a cold wind sweeping through. "A puppet? Mr. Gere, I'm the voice of Americans you never bother to see. And as for slander, just wait. The truth doesn't need acting." Conservatives stand, applause thundering, while liberals sit silently, their eyes anxious. Lena stands, raising a hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need a moment to cool down." She turns to the camera. "Viewers at home, who do you think is winning?" Lena Harper, standing center stage, her eyes gleaming like a host holding a lit fuse. "Ladies and gentlemen," she declares, her voice ringing like a bell, signaling a decisive battle. "Karoline Leavitt has pushed Richard Gere to the edge. She promised a secret that could change everything. Is it time? The crowd roars. Conservatives brandishing Leavitt lead signs like weapons, while liberals sit silently, their eyes tense. Cameras pan to Karoline Leavitt, her red blazer blazing like fire, her gaze sharp as a ready blade. Richard Gere, opposite her, tries to maintain composure, but sweat glistening on his forehead betrays his unease. Lena leans in, her voice provocative. Karoline, the nation is waiting. You hinted at a story about Mr. Gere. Is now the time to reveal it. Leavitt rises, her movements slow but commanding, holding a thin folder of documents, the stage lights glinting off the white paper, drawing every eye. The audience holds its breath, murmurs falling silent. Lena Leavitt begins, her voice like a cold wind sweeping across a desert. I'm not here for cheap drama, but when Mr. Gere dares to judge the president's family, he must answer for himself. She turns to Gere, her gaze locking on, Mr. Gere, you call yourself a human rights champion, but Americans deserve to know the truth about you. She raises the folder higher, each word like a hammer blow. 5 years ago, Mr. Gere sent a letter to President Trump's office, begging for funding for his human rights project. He wrote flowery words about world peace, but when denied, he turned to attacking the man he once groveled to. That's not human rights, it's hypocrisy. The audience gasps, conservative cheers crashing like waves, while liberals sit stunned, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Gere's face pales, his lips trembling, managing only a shaky, that's a lie. The camera zooms in, capturing his face, now stripped of all smugness. Lena cuts in, Karoline, that's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? Leavitt smiles, unshaken. Lena, I have a copy of the letter right here. And tonight, it'll be posted on X for Americans to judge. She turns to the audience, her voice ringing like a battle cry. You want the truth? Check #Leavitt. Exposes Gere right now. The studio erupts, applause mixing with shouts. Lena turns to Gere, her eyes sharp. Mr. Gere, Miss Leavitt just accused you of begging Trump and then betraying him. How do you respond? Gere, now visibly panicked, points at Leavitt, his voice trembling. This is a dirty White House trick. I never sent that letter. She's making it up to deflect. But his words are drowned by conservative boos. One audience member yells, Liar Gere. Leavitt, still standing, looks straight at him, her voice like a piercing blade. Mr. Gere, Americans don't need excuses. They need the truth. And the truth is you picked the wrong stage, the wrong opponent, and the wrong time to judge the president. Conservatives stand, applause thundering, while liberals sit silently, their eyes bewildered. One liberal audience member whispers to a friend, if that letter's real, Gere's done. Lena, sensing the climax, stands, raising a hand. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we just witnessed a media knockout. But the drama isn't over. She turns to the camera. Viewers at home, whose side are you on? Karoline or Gere? The air now feels like a battlefield after a storm. The smoke of Karoline Leavitt's truth bomb still lingering. The audience still buzzing from the fictional letter revelation. Screams and claps. Conservatives dominating with Leavitt leads. Signs raised high like victory flags. Lena Harper, standing center stage, her eyes gleaming like a host who's just witnessed history, raises a hand to quiet the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, she says, each word like a brush sweeping away the remnants of earlier smugness. Karoline Leavitt just changed the game. Richard Gere, now it's your chance to fight back. The camera pans to Richard Gere, his face ashen, eyes dazed like a defeated warrior, hands gripping the chair as if clinging to a final shred of hope. Karoline Leavitt sits opposite, her red blazer burning like an unquenchable flame, her gaze calm but razor sharp, like a fighter who knows she's landed the decisive blow. Lena leans toward Gere, her voice provocative. Mr. Gere, Miss Leavitt just accused you of sending a begging letter to President Trump, then turning on him when rejected. She called it hypocrisy. How do you respond? Gere takes a deep breath, trying to regain composure, but his voice falters, like an actor forgetting his lines on the biggest stage of his life. Lena, I never sent any letter, he stammers, his eyes avoiding Leavitt. This is a tactic to smear me. I've spent my life fighting for human rights. while Miss Leavitt only defends a man who's unworthy. But his words are drowned by conservative boos. One audience member shouting, "Liar Gere, the truth is out." Liberals once clapping fervently, now sit silently, some with heads bowed, as if sensing their idol's defeat. Lena, with her host's instincts, doesn't let the moment slip. "Karoline." She turns to Leavitt, eyes gleaming. "Mr. Gere called it a dirty game. Anything to add?" Leavitt sits upright, her gaze piercing Gere like an arrow, her voice booming like thunder in a quiet sky. "Lena, I don't play dirty games. I bring the truth to Americans, the workers, the families Mr. Gere never bothers to care about. He may act well on the silver screen, but here, on this stage, he can't act his way out of the truth." Conservatives leap to their feet, applause crashing like waves, one holding a Trump Forever sign and shouting, "Karoline is queen." On X, the hashtag #Leavitt exposes Gere continues to dominate, with millions of views. One account tweets, "Gere's done. Karoline is the GOAT." A viral meme, Gere's image with the caption, "When you think you're a human rights hero but Karoline has the receipts." A short video, splicing Gere's stammering with Leavitt's victorious smile, racks up tens of millions of views in minutes. Liberals try to push back. The letter's fake, Leavitt's manipulating. But their voices are drowned by a flood of memes and comments backing Leavitt. Fox News reports in real time. Leavitt dominates talk show. Gere crumbles under letter accusation. Lena turns back to Gere, her voice soft but sharp. "Mr. Gere, Miss Leavitt says Americans deserve the truth. Anything to say to salvage this?" Gere, now a shadow of himself, shakes his head, his voice faint. "I have nothing to say to fabricated accusations." He stands, leaving the stage amid boos and a few scattered claps from liberals. Cameras follow, capturing Gere walking backstage, head bowed, swarmed by paparazzi at the exit. A reporter shouts, "Mr. Gere, is the letter real?" Gere doesn't answer, silently stepping into his car, his eyes reflecting defeat. Leavitt, still on stage, answers Lena's final question. "Karoline, you just stunned the nation. What drove you to do this?" Leavitt looks straight into the camera, her voice like light piercing darkness. "Lena, I did this for Americans, people mocked by Hollywood for loving family, loving country. President Trump fights for them, and I fight for him." Conservatives roar, applause thundering. One audience member holds up a phone, live streaming the moment, tweeting, "Karoline just knocked out Gere media queen." Lena stands, raising a hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we just witnessed a historic moment. Thank you for watching, and see you next time." As the show breaks, Leavitt leaves the stage amid cheers, her eyes gleaming with victory. On X, the wave of support for Leavitt surges. One account writes, "Gere picked the wrong opponent. Karoline is unbeatable." CNN, reluctantly, reports Leavitt overwhelms Gere in fiery talk show. Meanwhile, Gere, in his car, scrolls through X, seeing himself mocked everywhere. He closes his eyes, realizing his star has faded, and Karoline Leavitt, with her truth bomb, now rules the media stage. A week after the seismic showdown on The American Perspective, America remains gripped by the media storm Karoline Leavitt unleashed. From phone screens on X to newsrooms in New York, the battle between Leavitt and Richard Gere wasn't just a talk show moment. It was a media blaze that incinerated Hollywood's aura and ignited a new conservative icon. Leavitt, the 27-year-old press secretary, with her truth bomb, the fictional letter accusing Gere of begging Trump, turned an interview into the epicenter of national discourse, reshaping how media reflects American politics. On X, it's an unrelenting wave, with millions of posts. Conservative fans hail Leavitt, with a viral tweet, "Karoline just tore Hollywood apart. Media queen." A fan-made video, splicing Leavitt raising the documents on stage with epic music, garners tens of millions of views. Memes flood the platform. Leavitt on a podium captioned, "When you don't just win but write your opponent's script." Liberals try to counter, the letter's fake, Leavitt manipulates the media. But their voices are drowned by a tsunami of pro-Leavitt comments. One account writing, "Gere picked the wrong person to mess with," and Karoline made him pay. X isn't just a platform, it's a battlefield, where Leavitt controls the narrative. The press, from conservative to liberal, can't ignore it. Fox News runs constant headlines. Leavitt crushes Gere press secretary shapes public opinion. A Breitbart analysis praises, Karoline Leavitt is the flag bearer of the Trump era, turning media into a weapon. Newsmax hosts a round table, calling her the new conservative hero. Even CNN, reluctantly, reports, Leavitt dominates talk show, raising questions about Hollywood's role in politics. The New York Times, cautiously, writes, Leavitt turned an accusation, though unverified, into a knockout blow, showcasing the power of direct media. Articles, whether supportive or critical, agree on one thing: Leavitt has changed how media responds to political controversies, turning a talk show into a national focal point. The American public, from small towns to big cities, is swept up in the media frenzy. A truck driver in Missouri tweets, Karoline speaks for us, the people Hollywood laughs at. A teacher in Georgia posts, she gives me faith that truth still wins. These comments, like bricks building Leavitt's legacy, turn her into a symbol for ordinary Americans. A veteran in Texas writes on X, Leavitt defends family values, something Hollywood doesn't get. The post garners tens of thousands of likes, reflecting public empathy for Leavitt, who stood up to the elite. A live stream on X, capturing people in an Ohio bar cheering as they rewatch Leavitt's truth bomb, spreads rapidly, racking up millions of views. Richard Gere, in stark contrast, sinks into media obscurity. He cancels all appearances, only briefly seen at a Los Angeles charity event, his eyes vacant, his face haggard like a man who's lost his soul. A Deadline article writes, Gere, from legend to laughingstock after Leavitt's blow. A film project of his is cancelled, citing financial difficulties, but insiders reveal, no one wants to touch him after this. On X, a viral meme, Gere with his head bowed, captioned, when you want to be a human rights hero but Karoline has the receipts. Gere, once a global controversy veteran, now becomes a symbol of defeat before modern media. The media doesn't just reflect, it amplifies. Other talk shows, from The View to Hannity, dissect the battle. A Fox News commentator says, Leavitt showed Hollywood they're not the center of the universe. Meanwhile, an MSNBC guest warns, Leavitt wields media like a weapon, but it could backfire. On X, conservative fans host a meme festival, with a parody video of Gere writing a begging letter to Trump, earning millions of likes. One account writes, Karoline didn't just take down Gere, she took down the liberal media system. This wave, like wind sweeping a prairie, turns Leavitt into the centerpiece of a new conservative movement. As Washington's city lights twinkle under the night sky, Karoline Leavitt stands in her White House office, her eyes like a wind sweeping a prairie, carrying unyielding resolve. 2 months after the seismic showdown on The American Perspective, the media storm from X, the press, and the public has settled, but the legacy of the Leavitt-Gere battle still echoes, like a bell shaping a new era. Leavitt didn't just take down a Hollywood legend with the letter, she sparked a movement, changing how America views truth, power, and the elite. The media storm secured an immediate victory for Leavitt. But her legacy goes beyond hashtags and headlines. Leavitt became a conservative icon, a flag bearer for Americans who feel ignored by Hollywood and liberal media elites. She didn't just defend President Trump against Gere's insult about the Trump-Melania marriage. She gave a voice to millions of workers, from Kansas farmers to Ohio laborers. Hollywood, once self-styled as the cultural center, now faces a reputation crisis. After Gere's defeat, stars police their statements, avoiding direct attacks on Trump or the conservative movement. A Hollywood Reporter article writes, Leavitt made Hollywood realize they're not untouchable. Actors now think twice before wading into politics. A prominent director in a private interview admits Karoline's a nightmare. She turned a talk show into a lesson for the industry. This quiet caution marks a cultural shift. Hollywood is no longer a safe stage for political lectures but a battlefield where warriors like Leavitt hold sway. The story of the showdown between Karoline Leavitt and Richard Gere on The American Perspective deeply reflects the political polarization and media power in American society in 2025. Leavitt, The young press secretary used the letter to crush Gere after he insulted the Trump-Melania marriage, turning him from a Hollywood legend into a laughingstock. This detail shows how media, especially platforms like X, can shape public opinion in minutes, with the hashtag #Leavitt, exposes Gere dominating and memes going viral. Gere, representing Hollywood's elite, failed by underestimating the power of the American public workers like truck drivers or teachers, who backed Leavitt for defending family values. Leavitt's legacy, becoming a conservative icon praised by Trump, underscores the desire of ordinary Americans for their voices to be heard over the elite. The lesson is clear: in a polarized society, every public statement, especially on platforms like X, must be carefully weighed. Gere failed with a reckless comment, while Leavitt succeeded by understanding her audience and leveraging media. Americans today, from individuals to businesses, should learn to communicate authentically but strategically, avoiding personal attacks without preparing for public backlash as Gere did. Take inspiration from Leavitt, connect with the core values of the community, family, truth, and use media tools to build lasting influence. In a volatile digital world, wisdom and empathy for ordinary people will always be the key to victory. Subscribe to the channel to not miss Karoline Leavitt's journey in shaping truth and taking on Hollywood's elite. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video with even bigger media drama.